Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to start with a quick update on a couple of international things, starting first in India. This was the latest satellite data we collected today from the satellite MODIS onboard Terra. So just a quick reminder, these dark swaths that you see through here is where the edge of the satellite path doesn't cover. So basically the swath width of data collection is about this wide in this area. You can still continue to see, though, through the Ganges River Valley over toward Bangladesh, there's incredibly thick aerosol content or smoke content, pollution content in the atmosphere, and it's really showing up quite well there on satellite. So that problem continues. I'm going to take you somewhere else real quick, though. Let's go over to China. If you look today, this whole region has been cleared out by a rather broad and quick-moving front that's kind of removed a lot of the poor air quality that was in this area. But take a look. If we go back just a couple of days, let's go back to the 20th. There's the 19th. Now you can start to see what I'm talking about. A lot of this haze and smoke and smog here, again, just recently cleared out by that front, and now we've got much better air quality in China. So I just thought you'd like to see that. By the way, I get all of this from one of my favorite websites, worldview.earthdata.nasa.gov. If you just Google Worldview NASA, you'll be able to find this and take a look at this imagery yourself. Okay, next I want to get into kind of our long-range forecast first. We're going to do this kind of in two bits here. We're going to talk first about what's happened recently and why it's kind of connected well with the kind of the energy transport coming out of the tropics. And then I want to get into what some of the new long-range data are suggesting, which were just released this afternoon. So you've been looking at ocean temperatures here. This continues to be our La Nina. Now, a couple of things to take note of. Trade winds are still relatively strong to about this point. All right, we've had a lot of colder water showing up over here. This is Nino region 1 and 2, right up against South America. We still have our rather deep pool of colder water that's still sitting here in the Gulf of Alaska as well. And there's still an extension that kind of comes off the Baja toward Hawaii. Now, what's important about this is that here we are, 22 days into November, and if this was going on and we said, well, let's correlate that to historical weather, this is what we would have gotten. So the graphic shows you for November, Nino region 3.4, that's the middle of the Pacific Ocean. What's the correlation with precipitation? So remember, the red colors would represent drier conditions and the blue would represent wet. And so while we'd expect, nearer to normal up around the eastern Great Lakes, above normal in the northern plains, getting back to the Pacific Northwest, these are the areas that we tend to see drier conditions when there is La Nina developing. And what's nice about this, or interesting about this is what we've had from the beginning of November until the morning of the 22nd. And it really does show that those places that are normally forecast to be wetter than average when there is a La Nina brewing in November ended up being that way. So a lot of consistency, but I think the relationship is more complicated than just to say La Nina is the result of this. It's more of a full tropical picture that I'd like to paint for you here in the next few moments. Okay, so that is our precipitation correlation. What about temperatures? Well, if we correlate Nino region 3.4, remember that we have to reverse the color bar in our head. So let's do this. The cooler colors represent warmer, all right? And the red colors would represent cooler. I'll put a C over here for it. So what this generally means is that, this section of the country tends to have warmer conditions. When there's a La Nina, we tend to be cooler across the northern tier and then into the east and southeast, okay? That's what happens when there is a La Nina brewing. This is what we've got. You can kind of almost see that pattern, right? If there's been cold air, it's come out into this direction, which we've been talking about. Although there have been some warmer days in November that have gotten into the northern plains. But still, we would look at this and say, that's correlating quite well with this developing La Nina we've been talking about. But the additional factor that I want to discuss with you about this is the MJO. Now, we're going to piece this together, all right? The MJO started off here in phase 5 back in October, tried to come over here into phase 1 and 2, and failed, and came right back and is now currently sitting here, just outside of null space in phase 4. We expect it over the next 15 days or so to move through phase 5 and possibly into phase 6, and maybe extend over into phase 7 with time. But we're going to have to call this into question. Because in order to extend the MJO way over here into the West Pacific, or even have it come back over into phase 1, so to get into this region, 7, 8, and 1, we've got to completely demolish what the trade winds are currently doing. They cannot nose into that region that's just north of Australia. That doesn't work if you want this to happen, which means developing La Niñas tend to not give us MJO phase 7, 8, or phase 1. So there's a question to see if the MJO is just going to continue to favor this particular region, and what I want to do is talk to you about what that might mean. So the winds I'm talking about, don't look up here or down here. We're looking at these winds. These are the trade winds, okay? We can see that this is our pocket of those stronger trade winds. And what's going on is over in the Indian Ocean, we have a little bit of a westward component to the same trade winds in through here. But the net effect is the air is coming from this direction here, that direction over here, and there just tends to be a lot of rising motion in between. That's where we get our MJO phase, which has been right about phase 5. That's where phase 5 is. So 6 is here, 7 and 8, and then you start back over. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, when we look over the next 15 days, see this column right in through here? That's where our best rising motion is, and it's right around phase 5 and phase 6. We can also look at that by going to the trade wind graphic and say from today all the way through December the 7th, where there's blues, there's strong easterly winds, and that's right in through this area. And where there's the reds, that's where those westerly winds are coming in, and that's right in through this area. So this is going this way, that's going that way, and they meet somewhere here in phase 5, 6, and the air has to rise. So that rising air is happening along that line through the next 15 days, and that goes from 5 over to 6. See how I just lined it up here? So what typically happens when that occurs? Well, we've been discussing phase 5 quite a bit. Trough in the Gulf of Alaska, ridge over the west, deep trough over the east. Blocking pattern here with the negative North Atlantic oscillation, which means cold in the east and northeast, cold in Europe, blocked up pattern here for about 10 days over parts of the North Atlantic. Now, if we transition out of phase 5, which is the phase we're in and going into right now, into phase 6, watch this. Let's go back and forth. 5 to 6. The pattern progresses. Strong extension of the Pacific jet right there. When there's a low north of a high, that's what you end up getting. The ridge then broadens out in the midsection of the country, and the trough exits. And that displaces our pattern that was blocked up over the North Atlantic, that negative NAO, and it shifts things over Europe as well. Now, can we get out of phase 6 into phase 7? And phase 7 still gives us a really strong jet stream, piece of the jet stream across the Pacific, excuse me. It also gives us this feature here, and then a highly amplified pattern going into Europe. And I don't know if we'll be able to get into that phase yet. I think we will in January and February. I think we'll have no trouble there when the La Niña is weakening. But in the near term, I don't think we're going to see that. Now let me show you why I feel this way. Let's go straight to the trough ridge pattern. As we play forward through this week, Monday into Tuesday, now into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, let's just take it all the way out to this weekend. Take a look at what we've got. Extension of the Pacific jet stream here, ridge over the west, trough over the northeast, big North Atlantic ridge, that's the big negative NAO pattern, trough over Europe. Now, you see that right there. I know it's a little bit different projection, but this is phase 5. Trough, trough, North Atlantic ridge, west coast ridge. See it? So let's come back to that again. Whoops, sorry. How about here? There we go. That's this weekend. Well, what about into next week? Well, as we play this through Monday and Tuesday, going out to the beginning of December now, here we are in the beginning of December. I don't know, let's just keep letting it play a little farther forward. We end up getting a very strong branch of the Pacific jet coming through. See, low over high. Weak ridging in the midsection of the country. The trough is here over the Canadian Maritimes, and this ridge has been weakened, and the downstream trough through Europe has continued to move. Now look at this, and this is phase 6. The trough moved out. This ridge moved east. There's a trough over New England, a broad ridge over the central United States, and there's that strong Pacific jet. So I'm really buying in the correlation of the pattern through at least the next 10 days, linking up well with MJO5 and then MJO6. But after that, watch, let's just go out there into week 2. This is not what phase 7 of the MJO looks like. So that first week of December, ridge, deep trough or deeper trough in the west runs over a ridge in the Midwest. This sets things up to be, for the first week of December, to be quite active in this area. Coming out of this trough into a ridge, cools off the west again. This is not a typical phase 7 pattern at this point. And so we're going to watch this all very carefully, and I'll get back to that near-term forecast in a minute, but this is what it eventually gives us here. Let's find it here. There we go. You end up getting a 10-day precipitation pattern. As the ridge builds in, we're relatively dry here. Do you notice in that pattern there's just nothing to dig a deep trough into the midsection of the country? They're all on the wings. There's one here that targets British Columbia. There's one in the northeast that keeps sweeping systems into that area. But the action misses this particular area. The temperature pattern, well, if the flow is doing that, cold air more often than not over the next 10 days over the east, but expanding warmth at times that comes into this whole area from the Great Basin and southwest to the plains into the Canadian prairie. But we don't expect it to sit there forever. Pattern seems to be open and moving after about day 10. Now, let's come back to this and give the treatment back to the La Nina side of things. Because this La Nina, I mean, it continues to push. It's there. And I'll show you something. Let's refresh this. This is going to start in September. Remember that this is going to go from South America over here to Australia over on this side. And this is depth beneath the Pacific Ocean surface, which is there. Now, what I want you to see is that there's warm water here, but there's a lot of cold water that continues to upwell there. And I think we're going to see the effect of this upwelling from now through about mid-January. And what I'm going to be very interested to see is a combination of events happening at some point within the first 3 weeks of January. And you ready for this? This is what I think is going to happen. 1. Those ocean temperatures in Nino region 3.4 have been falling off. They briefly warmed up in early November, but they've gone back over steady again. They're about minus 0.75. If I could continue drawing this, I think they're going to stay in this general vicinity, maybe drop a little bit more, through about the end of December, start of January. At that point, somewhere in through here, early January, I think the trade winds are going to start to slacken, and those ocean temperatures are going to start to warm up as a result. At the same time that I see that occurring, the MJO is going to finally have its chance to move over into phase 7, 8, possibly going back to phase 1 and 2, something it hasn't done in a while. When it does this, I also expect the polar vortex, which is right now behaving and is strong. Remember, strong polar vortexes do not give way to deep intrusions of cold air across Europe or Russia or any part of North America. And the polar vortex is strong. Let me show you just how strong it is. You can see right now that compared to average, whoops, sorry. Let's try that again. There we go. That right in through this area, that's average. You see this line here? That's the current position of the strength of those winds at that level. Now, if they dropped off in a hurry down here to the bottom of this graph, we'd be looking at some sense of a disruption, which could translate into a major colder outbreak. We call that a sudden stratospheric warming event. But we usually can't predict those more than about 10 to 15 days out. But we'll watch for it. I think that sometime in that first 3 weeks of January, something like this is going to happen. And it's going to give us a massive flip in the pattern in January. And we're going to have to watch out for it. Now, our models aren't going to go reaching out that far just yet. So why don't we just get the new data out here now that we've seen what to expect at least through the end of November, start of December, and let's go beyond that. The latest European model suggests better and stronger onshore flow in the west. Even though we have yet to develop a subtropical component of the jet stream, the latest European model is bringing that wetter weather into the San Joaquin Valley, which is something it hasn't done yet. But for the whole of the Pacific Northwest, the Canadian Prairie, the Midwest, into the Great Lakes, those are going to be our target areas for having above average precipitation. And don't think that the Northern Plains is going to get away from all of this. I expect to see, normal routine systems cutting through that area as well. Probably a lot of clipper systems that'll go through that region. On the temperature side of it, the temperature map is going to be a bit misleading when I show you a 30-day outlook because you see a lot of warmth in through here. But remember, a lot of this is dominated by the first week or so where that bigger ridge comes in. So that's biasing it that warm just to start. But I continue to see colder air getting let out from the Canadian Prairie through the Midwest and getting over to the East Coast with time. Piggybacking off of that, let's go talk about Europe. Because of this same setup, we do expect Europe to favor throughout the month of December more cold days than warm days. That's going to continue to be a theme as we look forward to this. And I know I have a separate video for South America, but I would like to just show you something. The latest data that came out for Australia continues to show December favoring that La Nina. I mean, look at all this wet weather. That's what happens when the MJO noses into this area when there's a La Nina. We bring that tropical moisture into parts of Australia as well. So Australia just had a very wet start to the month of November, and they're much above average on precipitation. It looks to continue into the month of December. All right. Okay, we've got all this bigger picture stuff out of the way. Why don't we come back and take a look at the near-term weather factors? We're going to begin first with our all hazards weather map. We do have some cold air that's still sitting down here in the south, so there's freeze warnings here in Alabama and also frost advisories here right along the coast and near around South Carolina. Winter weather advisories in the Great Lakes. We're going to see multiple chances at lake effect snow around the Great Lakes with each system that wraps into the northeast. And right now we're dealing with wind problems here getting into tomorrow on Tuesday. That'll stretch the parts of the plains and the high plains back into Montana. We still have winter weather advisories out for the Northern Rockies and the Cascades. All right. So from here, why don't we just take a look at our multi-model analysis? Got the GFS on the left and the European on the right. We're starting this off 6 a.m. tomorrow. So high pressure sitting over parts of the Tennessee Valley in both models. We still have some of that onshore flow from a deeper low that went into British Columbia. And by the way, British Columbia is going to get clobbered over the next 10 days. As we play this forward, there's a weak little clipper that goes just in the northern part of the Canadian Prairie into the Hudson Bay. But outside of that, it might bring on Wednesday some scattered snow showers here to the northern plains. You can see it in the European pretty well. As we play forward from Wednesday into Thursday morning, so this is Thanksgiving morning, we have a high pressure cell sitting here. There's another bit of high pressure in the plains, and the flow around it's going something like this. And instead of seeing a low like we thought about last week developing on this boundary and running along it, it just appears we're going to get some, frontogenesis, the creation of our front. And that's going to happen right in this area, and it is in both models. So that's a pretty clear picture here. Now, from Thursday morning to Thursday midday, that front moves east. We can also see that this area up here, which has been dealing with a tremendous amount of flooding, is going to have another round of strong onshore flow on Thanksgiving as well. This is the evening of Thanksgiving, and we're going to work our way into this Friday. Now, as that system pulls into the northeast, could get some snow in the Appalachian Mountains, rain out ahead of it, and you can see the lake effect snow coming from the cold air that's going to be on the back side of this. So as we go into the weekend, that system pulls into the northeast in Quebec and spins around. And there's a little bit of a difference here in the models. The European sneaks a little shortwave in right through here, Saturday into Sunday. It's actually there in the GFS, but the GFS, just watch, I'll rock back and forth on Saturday into Sunday. The GFS on the left doesn't quite have the same magnitude of precipitation with this. But the European swipes it through, bringing some snow into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes states, possibly even clipping northern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. We'll have to wait later this week to see if that verifies. And then that passes on off to the east as well. So we could get some more snow in parts of the mid-Atlantic from that in and around the DC area back into West Virginia. It's not really shown up as a strong signal in the GFS though. So that takes us all the way out almost a week. And as we play into next week, Monday into Tuesday, what we start to see is a changeover where the Pacific Northwest really starts to take on the brunt of this going into December. But if we just look out over that next week, what we just saw here in terms of total accumulated precipitation, since the models were pretty darn close to one another, I think it's represented pretty well in the European. So what we've got starting off Monday, Tuesday, a little bit of lake effect snow, onshore flow in the northwest. As we then play into Thursday and Friday, so this would be Thanksgiving, the end of the week Thanksgiving, our stalled out frontal boundaries here. We've got precipitation along that. Then as we get into Saturday and Sunday, British Columbia targeted, but there's a little clipper system running through here. And you can see us adding that precip in there Saturday to Sunday. And then that curls into the Appalachian Mountains by Sunday and pulls on into the northeast. But if I just take this out all the way to next, let's just take this out, I don't know, Monday evening, we do see where our precipitation is forecast to be at this point. I'd like to bring up and encourage you just to pause the video and take a closer look, but this is our model comparison. So the GFS against the European here. So pause it if you'd like to take a closer look. I'm going to leave the comments on the side here, and I want to get to excuse me, where this is going in terms of snowfall. Snowfall so far this year, this would be accumulated snowfall departure from normal. The normal is taken from the 2008 to 2020 average. And you can see that we've had some bigger events in the Sierra Nevadas, getting here into this part of the Rockies and also in the Cascades. Really strong shadow effect here from the mountains into Montana. But outside of that, you get on this side of the Rockies, there's only been this region and this region that have been above normal, except for just downwind of the Great Lakes here. Otherwise, New England, parts of the northern plains, a little bit of a snow drought just to start things off this year. So where are we going to add some snow to this? Well, let's just see. As we play this forward, there's just light snow coming in overall. If we just play this out, I'll stop it out here next Monday. Could get a little bit in through here. All right, not much. Some up in the Appalachian Mountains, but other than that, just light snow, except for downwind of the Great Lakes and in the interior New England. But look at British Columbia here. Holy cow. Possibly 6 to 10 inches of liquid equivalent into that area. And then we're going to lift all that and create some snow there. So very, very heavy snow in that region. Okay, maybe another way to summarize this. This is the next 10 days looking at the probability of getting less than a ½ inch of total precipitation. So now you see where the high probabilities are. Those are your dry spots. So I think that really gives us a better idea about this. Okay, week 2, you ready? This is starting next Monday. And as we play through middle of next week into the beginning of December, you notice that the pattern stays relatively open and moving. And we do get this trough, let me just show you here, that comes through in the first week of December, right in the midsection of the country. Before it gets there, strong onshore flow in the west. Trough digs in here, and that's why the week 2 precipitation pattern goes from looking like this now to like that into week 2. So what do we end up getting? Better flow here. Trough comes through and ejects, so we could see better chances of precipitation there. That's our week 2 forecast. Temperatures, and we'll wrap this one up. Ready? Frost chances over the next 7 days from the National Digital Forecast Database. A lot of cold air is going to be getting into the southeast and the south. See it? So that's everywhere in gray. We have a good chance at seeing a frost. Why don't we talk about those minimum temperatures first here? And if we watch this, we've already seen Monday's minimum temperature, so there's Tuesday. Frost line's pretty far to the south here in the southeast and almost all the way up to the coast. Raleigh, North Carolina, 25 on Tuesday morning. As we get into Wednesday, major warm-up in the midsection of the country, while the east still has cooler weather to deal with, 23 in Raleigh on that morning. As we play this forward into Thursday, Thanksgiving morning, getting into Friday morning, next round of cold air comes through behind the next front, and this is on Saturday and Sunday. So repeated chances of cold air in the east, but take a look at the high temperatures here. Ready? Here was Monday's highs. Watch Tuesday, tomorrow. Holy cow, 70s across a big section of the Central Plains here. And then that warmer air will move east on Wednesday. Really nice day in through here on Wednesday. But then the rain comes along that front, and Thursday behind it, we got some colder air. So this is now Friday's high temperatures getting into Saturday. So major warm-up as the ridge comes in. But again, more shots of cold air coming over here into the southeast. And that shows up really nicely here in our day 5 through day 10 time period. This gets us all the way to the end of the month. So with the ridge opening back up, warmer conditions, with the cold air still exiting here. But take a look at this. This is that pattern shift going over to MJO phase 6. The flow does something a bit more like that. So there's the broader scale warmth that we're going to get into as we start the month of December. Hey, I appreciate you kind of hanging on a little longer here. I had a lot of time while I was on a short trip with my family to think about this, and I just wanted to share with you my latest thoughts on this connection between La Nina and the MJO at the beginning. With that, though, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you all have a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you again on Friday. I'm going to take Thursday off to spend it with my family, but I'll shoot out a video on Friday. Thanks.